Hey, remember when I canceled your student debt?
Hell yeah! And thank you
Reverse!
What?
You can have it back.
Why?
Those guys said no.
The gays! What the hell?
Well, they're not big fans of the LGBTQ plus community.
What are they fans of?
Affirmative inaction.
We're gonna have less rights than a NASCAR race.
They don't have any roads.
So what do we do?
We fight!
What is happening?
I honestly have no idea. Is that a money tie?
More like a money noose, am I right?
What the fuck?
You kids just want to complain about
Not
everything.
now, boomer! Not now.
Hey, good morning. So new rules. If you're gay, you're allowed to get your ass whooped in public. That's the way we're living now. And don't start with that whole, oh, it's Pride Month shit. We didn't do the rainbows for a reason. You didn't take the signs. That's your fault. If you ever tried to go to school, you are now $1 million in debt. And it will increase throughout your life. And, I think this is just a learning opportunity for everybody involved, right? I mean, it's like, stop trying to better yourself. Like, just stop it. A while ago, we decided we were going to stop allowing schools to discriminate against black people by not letting them in. We're going to run that one back. We're going to run that one back. I'm sorry. I mean, we just missed it. It just really felt like it was something missing from the core of our spirit, the core of this country. Don't be mad, though. However, black people, if you do get into school, you will be $2 million in debt. A lot of y'all in the back starting to look pissed off. You know we got these seats for life, right? I'm going to have to be in the fucking grave before you're able to overrule this shit. You know that, right? Guys, I've been getting a lot of mean comments saying that people want me dead. I just want to say that's really fucked up. We're a country. We're supposed to stand together as one.
Oh, bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch. Greatest love song. Greatest love song ever wrote.
Hey, come on, look, y'all ready? Girl, you're working with some mad shit. Your bad jazz make a nigga spend his cash at. His last shit, hold smile when you're bad shit. In mad jazz, you can ride in the jag, yeah. With that jazz, you can smoke a fire bag, yeah. A grass shit, got money, I can flash it. And trash it, I'm a big time a nigga, yeah. Pull the trigger, yeah. I play head up in the yeah. Red killer, yeah. The got me slaying wood, yeah. I'm out the hood, yeah. Let it be understood, yeah. It's all good, yeah. You got a nigga screaming large, yeah. On the hard, yeah. Who's a smooth little broad, yeah. Want some broad, yeah. But you would do a trick, yeah. On the dick, yeah. You claiming you want a bitch, yeah. It ain't shit, yeah. I'm the nigga with the money, yeah. Got it funny, yeah. Got birds that are running, yeah. About 100, yeah. Girl, you look good, want some back that ass up. So fine, motherfucker, want some back that ass up. From the big kid, sing it. Back that ass up. Girl, who is your plan, say it. Back that ass up. Girl, you look good, want some back that ass up. Yo, so fine, motherfucker, want some back that ass up. Call me Big Daddy when you back that ass up. Girl, who is your plan with? Back that ass up. Girl, you look good, want some back that ass up. Yo, so fine, motherfucker, want some back that ass up. You got a stupid ass, yeah. Make me laugh, yeah. Make a nigga wanna grab, yeah. Wanna grab, yeah. I'm sweating in the jaw, yeah. All dog, yeah. Wanna walk it like a dog, yeah. Break your heart, yeah. Get money, gon' get yours, yeah. I'm a sir, yeah. You fucking with my nerve.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz for the Sunday Sit Down. And happy white slave owners branching off from other white slave owners weekend. Some of y'all know it is 4th of July weekend. Now, tonight we do have a bit of a potpourri because your girl was down for the weekend, but I am back. So we're going to start off with a little Am I the Asshole action, and then we're going to get into some more serious things.
Am I in the wrong for getting a paternity test on my son who doesn't look like me? I'm a 29-year-old white guy. My wife is 30 and black. We have 2 kids, a 3-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. My wife got pregnant with our son early in our relationship. We had only been together a year. We got married because she got pregnant. Fortunately for us, we are actually happy. When my son was born, I accepted him as mine. However, I couldn't help noticing how little he looked like me. He is noticeably darker than my wife. He doesn't look half white. My family and friends have asked if I'm sure he's mine. I had doubts, but I initially decided to trust my wife. I loved my son regardless. When our son was 2, my wife had our daughter. I had no doubt she's mine. She looks just like me. She even has my blue eyes. I never realized how powerful it is to know a child is yours. I bonded with her easier because there wasn't the question of paternity dangling over our heads. My family bonded with her faster too. Her resemblance to me convinced me that my son is not mine. I tried to always treat them equally as I see them both as my children. But I realized I was beginning to resent my son. It felt unfair that I had to care for someone else's child. I also began to resent my wife because I felt she had betrayed me. I finally got a paternity test in secret. I was relieved to learn that my son is in fact mine. Genetics are weird. Anyways, that was 4 months ago and my relationship with my wife and son improved dramatically. I feel much closer to him now that I know he's mine. My wife and I have been so happy that we were talking about a 3rd child. I confessed to my wife I got a paternity test. I hated keeping the secret and I thought she would understand given how much he doesn't look like me. She flipped out. She asked me if I ever doubted our daughter, and when I said no she called me racist. It's not true. I didn't prefer my daughter because of her whiter features. I just knew she was mine. She also said that I made our son feel unloved for no reason for all those years. I said that's bull. Even when I didn't believe my son was mine, I treated him as though he were. My wife says she is thinking she wants to move out and take our children. It's been about a week and a half and I'm still on the sofa. I hope she would have calmed down by now, but things haven't changed. She's just so furious with me for not trusting her and for in her eyes, denying my son because he's dark. She barely talks to me unless it's about the kids. I don't want to lose my family. Am I in the wrong for this?
You don't have a family. You have a collection of fetishes. First of all, before you decide to engage in coitus, make sure you understand genetics, because whether the people are ethnically the same, racially the same, there are too many stories out here where these men are secretly getting paternity tests because one child doesn't look exactly like them, as if every child is going to come out and be carbon copies of them, as if there's not another parent involved. But to say it was easier to bond with your daughter because she had fairer skin. Now, I can only talk about the Black community. This is why we have an issue with some white parents to biracial children, because you fetishize them. You want pretty eyes and pretty hair, and when you don't get your version of these pretty eyes and pretty hair and their adjacency complexion-wise to whiteness, there isn't that connection. This is why so many people have a problem with interracial adoptions. Because the darker the skin, the worse these children are treated. They're treated as if they're automatically less than, as if they do not have the skill set of their counterparts. And even in the most privileged circumstances, there are times that they're not allowed to partake in what that privilege presents. And then there are those that couldn't pass the paper bag test. And if you don't know what that is, Google is free. Who grow up and try to force their adjacency through the children they birth, through the people they marry, and through the rhetoric that they spew. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at Miss Candace Owens and her pride grift.
To me out is that gay people and lesbian and trans people also got a month. Like what somebody give me the history lesson, right? That qualifies an entire month in celebratory rainbows. Was there an island where there was gay people that were living happily and all of a sudden they got put onto boats and chains and brought over to America and forced to work. I miss that history lesson that justifies them being able to throw their asses in my face for an entire month. It's annoying and it's ridiculous.
Gotta give Candace Owens this. When she engages in bad faith, she swings for the fences. That conservative grift money is so incredibly lucrative, it'll have people like Candace Owens saying some of the most asinine, ridiculous things because it's so financially lucrative, and quite frankly, she loves being a talking parrot for old white conservatives to go on Facebook and spout nonsense. This damn grifter knows damn well that Pride Month exists because of the gay liberation movement of the 1960s through the 1980s. This grifter also knows that the Stonewall riots in 1969, led by people like Marsha P. Johnson, a black trans woman, led to Pride Month. This grifter also knows that the LGBTQI community was ravaged by the AIDS epidemic in the 1980s, while the president, Ronald Reagan, did absolutely nothing to help these disenfranchised people. She knows this. She doesn't want you to know it. That's the problem. Pride Month exists because so long as there are marginalized people, they deserve to have time, space, and safety.
Everything he said was absolutely correct. But I want to talk on the part that so many people missed. Candace Owens has built a name for herself in multiple platforms and received the job that she has now because of one thing predominantly. She says that racism doesn't exist. And she's downplayed chattel slavery within the United States. But did you catch how she said she missed the history lesson where she tried to equate chattel slavery and how slavery came to be within the United States to the LGBTQIA plus community? Now, are there people within the community that have been affected by chattel slavery as well as systemic oppression and racism? Yes, because there's intersectionality within the LGBTQIA plus community. It is not all one ethnicity. It's not all one race. It's not even all one nationality. But when you really pay attention and listen to Candace, you realize she's not talking to the marginalized. She's talking to those that want to pretend that their reality is not real when they contain melanin. And she wants to talk to the people who do not want to address their own internal biases that they know that they hold on to because they still believe in the hierarchy of race. And that mediocrity equates to superiority, which equates to wealth. They're just all waiting for their bank accounts to match up to how they feel inside, while doing sometimes the bare minimum, most times below that. It's always give them enough time to talk. They will throw a fit and round themselves right around to the point and tell the truth. Now we know, as the weekend began, SCOTUS was up to their shenanigans again. Now, this case involving the LGBTQIA plus community, this decision that was handed down on the final day of Pride Month, you know what? Take a look at the evidence, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. See you in 2 and 2.
Hey gays, you don't have rights, but you got to pay your bills. No Gays Allowed is now allowed, and the door is wide open for a return to outright discrimination based on race, religion, or any reason deemed fit. United States Supreme Court's ruling in the 303 Creative versus Atlantis case was sponsored by the Alliance Defending Freedom and a plaintiff, Lori Smith, a web designer who did not want to design websites for gay marriage, not based on religious objection, based on freedom of speech. That now makes such discrimination legal. Now, Lori Smith has actually never designed a wedding website, nor has she ever been asked to. The entire ruling is based on a made-up scenario. And then the Supreme Court also ruled that President Biden's student loan forgiveness program was illegal. Although it wasn't illegal to forgive PPP loan borrowers or actual Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas, who accepted more than $150,000 in tuition from a billionaire. This tweet from CJ Lawrence is masterful. Ending affirmative action, stopping debt relief, all of this is part of a systemic plan to uphold systemic barriers and ensure a particular group remains exactly where they want them to be, where they want us to be.
Hello, I'm Lori Smith, owner of 303 Creative, and this morning we received incredible news. The United States Supreme Court ruled in favor of free speech.
There is no website development happening. There is no business operating. This was a made-up case without the benefit of any real facts or customers. The Supreme Court, in our view, should never have decided this case or addressed the merits without any basis in reality.
This has been a really challenging 7-year journey, and I'm so grateful for everyone's prayers, encouragement, and support along the way.
Unlike cases where you actually have facts that involve real customers and real decisions, in this case, there were no customers. There were no websites made. There was no business. Unfortunately, when you have hypothesized facts, you don't tend to get the same quality decisions.
So this woman who just won her case to not make gay wedding websites, looking at her designs, I'm like, what homosexual with any shred of taste would ever go to this woman? Do you know the story behind how this happened? In 2016, Lori Smith, a web designer in Colorado, went to the courts and she was like, help me, please. 2 gross gay guys want me to design a wedding website for them. Their names were Stuart and Mike, and all of Stuart's information is on the form. So a reporter contacted him this year. Stuart was baffled. He was like, girl, what are you talking about? I have a wife and a kid. He didn't even know until June of this year that his name was even attached to this lawsuit. So Lori Smith invented a gay couple in need of a wedding website so she could argue it in court. And when she filed this in 2016, Lori had not designed a single wedding website. The court was like, babe, no. The likelihood of anybody ordering your services, let alone gay people, Lori's like, but Stuart and Mike. The court was like, sis, we saw it. Nice try, but who even says Mike is a guy? So then their argument became whether Mike was a girl's name or a guy's name. Like, I'm not even kidding. This is what they argued about. And Mike isn't even real. But the craziest part is that Stuart, the real Stuart, is a web designer. Why would a web designer living in another state hire this woman who has never made a wedding website for his wedding, even though he's straight and has a kid?
So a woman won a case today at the Supreme Court level on an imaginary scenario. Like, she's never made a wedding website, and so therefore she's not even ever been asked by a gay couple to have a wedding website created. In some ways this makes sense, because a lot of conservatives and religious right really work under the idea of nothing but lies. Litter boxes in bathrooms, genitalia mutilation of minors, kids turning gay just by hearing the word gay in a classroom. Y'all are so pathetic that you'll waste taxpayer money on an imaginary scenario to go all the way to the Supreme Court because you want to feel oppressed? DOME has been defeated only 10 short years, and in 2015 is when we actually were recognized at the federal and state level for our marriages. And ironically enough, I've not seen news stories of us running around dragging priests out of churches into the streets and asking them to marry us while we wear jocks. What I have noticed are people like Charlie Morgan, who passed, who served in the military for 20 years. Her family get the benefits they deserve because they watched her house and home while she served this country at war. I watched my friends like Tom and Rick raise 2 amazing daughters to be outstanding individuals who contribute to society, and guess what? They're 2 dudes. It's like you guys have no common sense. It's like you suddenly just took a shit in the pool and you can't figure out why everybody's freaking out around you and wants to distance themselves as much as possible. I deserve to swim here too. I hate to break it to you all, but we will outlast you. Okay? We will. In the last 30 years, conservatives who have taken on these stances have only won the presidency with a popular vote once. We are part of every race, religion, gender, and creed. We're in male, female, and we're even in the they and thems. And even if you had some way of finding each one of us, even the deeply closeted ones, watch out Lindsey Graham, and put us on an island, no matter how fabulous that island would be, yes, we might die off after a while, but I hate to tell you something. You make us. So unless you stop appropriating, guess what? We're coming back. Because we're more charming than you. We have to learn how to navigate in spaces because people like this individual make up scenarios so strong in their head they're willing to go to the Supreme Court about a lie. But let's flip this decision on its head. You've all gone on this whole woke war. You're so worried about all these businesses being woke and pro-LGBTQ. So what if those businesses decide now to stop serving your homophobic asses?
The Christian nationalist lawyer group Alliance Defending Freedom, which was set up by Stephen Miller, is the one who represented the website maker. The Alliance Defending Freedom is the one who's representing the Christian nationalist doctors who want to ban the abortion pill. Both of them. One case has already been ruled on, and that abortion pill will eventually make it up to the Supreme Court. A sitting Supreme Court Justice, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, has been paid 5 times by this legal team to speak at events for the Blackstone Legal Fellowship. 5 times. So we have a legal team who is arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court that a Supreme Court justice was paid by, and she's not recusing herself. And the Supreme Court just broke, 1, the Constitution, and 2, precedent. Those are Kagan's words, not mine. I want to know what blue state majority states are going to do about these rulings. When's the breaking point? This is not okay. The Supreme Court is fucking illegitimate. Oh, it just gets worse. So if you don't know, the website designer who wanted to discriminate, she originally had no one requesting her to build a website. It was all done on a worry. Except magically, the day afterwards, supposedly somebody had asked her to build the website. Because obviously the Alliance Defending Freedom thought that they needed standing. We now know that the guy is straight and he lives in California and he's a web designer himself. What we didn't know is that the Stephen Miller team and the Alliance Defending Freedom targeted him on purpose. During the time the fake request was made, he was working on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. The Supreme Court just ruled for the entire fucking country on a hypothetical that was based on fraud. Twice. They ruled on cases where people who had no standing. There needs to be a top-down fucking investigation into this.
We have a very interesting development in the recent Supreme Court case that allowed a Christian web designer to deny services to an LGBTQ couple. The case was 303 Creative versus Elenis. And what happened in this case was allegedly in 2016, a couple that went by the name of Stuart and Mike contacted a Christian web designer. The Christian web designer's name was Lori Smith. Allegedly, Stuart and Mike were a gay couple, and Lori Smith did not want to provide them services. The Supreme Court later held that Colorado could not force Smith to provide services to gay couples, but there is an interesting twist. We're now learning that Stuart, one of the men in the couple, never inquired about Smith's services. Stuart is not even gay, and it's possible that his inclusion was complete fabrication, which means the Supreme Court didn't rule on an active dispute. There was never a gay couple that Lori Smith denied services to. This story is just breaking and has been confirmed by the Washington Post. As soon as we have more information, I'll provide you with updates, so be sure to follow along for more.
Let me start off by saying this. Unless someone is going to make a family-based website, they really aren't going to a web designer going, hey, I'm getting married in a year or 2 or 6 months. Can you make me a website? Because the wedding planning sites give you a free site, give you a free domain. And I brought this up to a couple of people and they were like, oh, but look at the ages of people on SCOTUS. I have an aunt who got married last year. She's a full decade older than me. That would put her into like the boomer range. Her invitations were paperless. They came through this website. She kept us all updated through the website. One of the ones that came through one of the planning sites that she utilized because it gave her free checklists to make sure, she covered all of her bases. She could put in the things that she wanted and keep track, get notifications, etc. So gay, straight, pan, queer, demi, etc., etc., etc. Who was going to be asking, period? And yes, there are times that you can be in the same profession as somebody else and you may outsource something for your personal well-being to someone else. But once again, when the tools are already out there and that is your niche, a little few tweaks here and there, you can handle yourself. But all of these made up scenarios to push forth a narrative that one certain religious group is under fire when this certain religious group is overtly represented across the nation is mind-blowing that people keep falling for it. No one is getting a federal holiday for Ramadan or Hanukkah. Stores are not flooded with decorations and greeting cards and clothing and costumes for other religious holidays. And if you remember, like a year or two ago, I covered this woman before in detail. And I even took slides, and I'm such a staunch Christian and I believe in all the Christian values. And she's almost as tatted as I am. And I'm not even the most tatted up, pierced person. Now, have I put together some basic websites for people? Yes, because there are people that are like, hey, I got this domain off of Wix or off of whatever, and they want to get the basics going, make it look good, make it function well, get their e-commerce set up, but they want to be able to sustain it themselves because they just don't have the budget to pay me or anybody else monthly to maintain it and update their inventory, etc. So you try to make it as basic as possible, but still look nice. I've created websites for people who have next to zero tech knowledge that they can put together that's better than that. Now, in recent years, I have moved on to more of fixing websites for people where they didn't quite get what they want because they went to somebody who gave them a too good to be true price, or they thought that they could do it on their own, or their sisters, uncles, cousins, best friends, daughters, classmates, neighbors said that they could do it for the low, and they realized that's just not it. But who in their right mind is paying this woman good money for that bullshit? And when you go to her page, 303 Creative, it's what you would expect. Right-wing propaganda sites. There's a lot of 1770 this, 1770 that. Honey, you were not. And she changed her story a little bit, saying that she did have, a few clients within the LGBTQIA plus community. She just didn't want to do wedding sites for them. If you're already doing business with someone with a product or service that visibly has your name or your signature, because everybody has a signature attached to it, what difference does it make? Whether you're helping them make money or helping them get married. But let's talk about just the SCOTUS here for a second.
Well, another disastrous day for the Supreme Court. Remember, a third of those justices were appointed by the twice indicted game show host who was also found liable for sexual abuse because some people in 2016 didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. And let's not forget that Mitch McConnell stole a Supreme Court seat from Barack Obama because Merrick Garland should be a justice right now. And here's where we're at. Just one terrible decision after another. And it's okay to be angry and it's okay to be frustrated. Believe me, I share those feelings. And my advice is to channel that energy and those feelings into helping Democrats get elected and Joe Biden reelected in 2024. So I don't care what your feelings are about Joe Biden and his age or whatever, because these terrible Supreme Court rulings are a testament to why you should vote blue no matter what. And I'll leave you with this from Barack Obama.
Hey, don't boo. Vote. Vote. They can't hear you boo, but they'll hear your vote.
I'm starting to think this court ain't too supreme at all. I don't see no sour cream, no tomatoes on this court. This ain't even a regular court. I would call it a value menu court, but hell, value menus actually help people who struggle, so I don't know. This court's really been on one. The past 2 days alone, they've undermined affirmative action, they've signed off on businesses discriminating against LGBT people, and they've shot down Biden's student loan relief program. Finally, Finally, the highest court in the land wields its awesome powers against those who truly deserve it. Minorities, gays, and poor people. Yes, just like the founders intended. Now, they always say, like, Constitution this, Constitution that, but I don't think the founders would be down with this. I feel like if you could bring one of the founders forward in time and talk to him about it, he'd be like, so how goes the Supreme Court? Protecting the will of the people, keeping tyrannical powers in check. No. Oh, cashing checks from tyrannical powers, yeah, but that other thing, no, it's more like getting the butt of the people, if you count that. Also, some of them are cultish lunatics, and they all live to be 100, so good call on that serving for life thing. Dude, if these people are going to keep serving for life, we need to bring back consumption or something, just for them. Like, if they still cough to death at 55 every now and then, the whole thing will be more palatable, right? But here we are. They started with affirmative action. They said universities can't use race as a factor in admissions. They have to use objective, merit-based factors like GPA, SAT score, and, of course, who your papa is. Right? They couldn't use race because that would be another type of discrimination, and the court says any type of discrimination is wrong. Meanwhile, in the very next case, the plaintiff was like, hey, can we put up a no queer sign? And they were just like, well, I don't see why not, right? That one's the most ridiculous one, dude, because it's a made-up case against made-up gays, and the court still ruled against them. It's crazy. And as far as the student loan relief thing, man, in a country where all of the most rich and powerful people, including members of this court, they all have handouts, kickbacks, bailouts, loopholes, PPP loans, corporate welfare, and all of that is not only accepted but considered sacrosanct, right? In that same country, generations of 18-year-olds, many of whom have barely been taught how bank accounts work, and all of whom have been told by every authority figure in their entire life that if they don't borrow that money for that reason at that time, they have no chance at a home, family, or future. So they do, only to discover 10 years later that the game was rigged from the start. Those people, verily, they must pay. That's how it works in this country. It is, as long as the GOP has any power. I can tell you that right now, dude. It's truly a shame that a party which has won one popular vote in 20 damn years is able to stack the deck like this, all because of some cosmic game of bucket kicking bingo. But here we are, and the message could not be more clear. The ethos of the Republican Party is bad for almost everyone. Okay, if you're not literally a male member of the landed gentry, they will make your life worse. They will. I don't know what else you need to see to understand that. I don't know how else to say it, but there it is. Love y'all.
When it comes to the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, if you will, let me explain to you why I tell you that every election is important, not just the presidential election. I know a lot of people have been conditioned just to go out in droves, just to vote for the big elections. Every election is big because at this point, you need to flip the House of Representatives. Why? Most importantly, yes, it is ingrained in you and taught over and over and over again that a seat on SCOTUS is a lifetime appointment. What they don't tell you is that they can be impeached and removed as well. Do with that information what you will. Right now, we're going to take a pause for the cause. Go grab some snacks. You're going to need them.
I don't dance, I just float, 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 float. I don't dance, I just float, 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 float. I just float. I'm light as a feather, I'm light as a feather, yeah baby I float. It's hard to look at my resume and not find a reason to toast. She throwing that thing in a circle, making it viral, I might just elope. Say listen.
On today's episode of White People Shit, some crazy lady wrote to a paper asking how she was going to tell her 30-year-old daughter that her brother is actually her father. Let's fucking get into it. So this anonymous writer wrote to the Atlantic's Dear Therapist column asking for some advice. So what had happened was, bitch meets dude. Dude has 2 kids, but snipped. She is hungry for a baby. So she says, we need a donor. And no, we don't want to ask a stranger to give us their cum. Hell, let's ask your son. And I guess he agreed. Allegedly. I don't know about you and white people shit, but I know some white people shit. And I know that there's probably other things to the story that she wasn't trying to write in the paper because it would incriminate her. But we fucking digress. So she gets the cum from the son, impregnates herself, and has this daughter. Now she needs help explaining to her 30-year-old daughter that her brother is her daddy, and a brother, and her nephew is her brother.
How do we get to the point where now she has to explain it? It's been 30 years. Did the brother now have another biological child? And the daughter is wondering why they look so much alike? And nobody looks like the daddy? But we're the savages. We're uncouth. Once again, happy white people running from white people weekend. Whew. Now, just when you thought the January 6th insurrectionists couldn't get any more bonoodles bazonkers and Trump couldn't get more despicable, let's just say I have a story that has both of those things all wrapped up into one in a jacked up wish.com bow and package. Let's roll the footage.
Good morning. Well, this is your Friday morning news report, and it is out of Washington. It seems there is a man named Taylor Toronto, 37 years old, who has been living in his van outside of the jail that his fellow insurrectionist was incarcerated or is incarcerated in. And he's also been on Truth Social talking about how he was not arrested for the insurrection. And he doesn't understand why he wasn't and his friend was. Maybe he thinks that was a badge of honor for his friend to be arrested. But he decided to make up for that. And the former guy, the narcissistic, twice impeached, one-term president, he decided to help him out. So he posted President Obama's address on Truth Social, handed it to this guy. I mean, just gave him what he needed. Taylor Toronto was arrested a couple of blocks from President Obama's home, and they found weapons, guns, and bomb-making materials in his van. So he's going to get to join his friend. But I think that this obsession that the orange hairball has with Obama, President Obama was a good president. There was never a scandal. 8 years, not one scandal from him or anyone in his White House or in his family. And I think that the jealousy is just eating Drumpf up. It's killing him. Yeah, so he thinks the way to take care of that is to hand these lunatics President Obama's address. He's a very, very sick man. Anyway, I am so glad that President Obama and his family are all right. He's not giving a statement at this time. At any rate, y'all just have a great day. I don't know what else to say. Just have a great day.
Don't forget that Trump posted Obama's address recently too. Jesus Christ. I did not know that. But it is confirmed. January 6th fugitive shared Trump post revealing Obama's address hours before arrest. January 6th rioter on the run from the law who was arrested outside of the Washington, D.C. home of former President Barack Obama shared a social media post by ex-President Donald Trump revealing his predecessor's address hours before he was detained. Taylor Taranto, 37, was arrested on Thursday on charges stemming from his activities during the Capitol riot in early 2021, but he was also discovered to have several firearms and the materials needed to make a Molotov cocktail in the neighborhood of the U.S. Capitol where the Obamas live. When I tell you that the red hats are dangerous, you need to listen. Stay safe out there. And come on, Jack Smith, you're our bestie. It's time to round all of these insurrectionists up and lock them all away forever.
Now, do you all understand why Donald John Trump is the only one that does not get daily briefings as a former president? Why he has no security clearance? Why they are freaking out so much regarding the documents he took and stored in various bathrooms and stages in Mar-a-Lago? Speaking of Trump, Joy Reid has a message that I believe everybody needs to hear. Take a look and listen.
Hey guys, so remember when Donald Trump said this?
In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution. Not gonna let me.
So what did he actually mean by that? Donald Trump, if you recall, sort of became popular as a political figure through the birther movement, which was, of course, this racist belief that Barack Obama was not like a true American, that he was born in Kenya, that he was secretly a Muslim, and that he wasn't qualified to be president, blah, blah, blah. It was a racist theory that Donald Trump embraced and kind of became the king of. That's how he became sort of popular politically. And the movement around him, the Making America Great Again movement, was basically a racist movement that essentially opposed the idea of a black president and wanted revenge on behalf of white, conservative Christian men who felt that the country was out of control. Women were out of control. You know, they'd gotten away from their prime directive of just get on your back, shut up, and have babies. Black people were out of control. Affirmative action meant that, you know, white people weren't getting into the colleges they wanted. White people weren't getting all the jobs that they wanted. And it's black people's fault. And of course, you know, blame the Jews. The Jews have a secret plot to bring in lots of migrants to take away the demographic advantage of white people. They were going to make white people into a minority. The bottom line being that it was white people who actually were the true victims of racial oppression, and they're the ones who needed a champion. Enter Donald Trump. Well, it is not just Donald Trump who had this sort of retributive attitude toward everybody other than white Christian men. There happen to be two members of the Supreme Court who have essentially the same vibe: Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas. And of course, Clarence Thomas has all sorts of like sort of odd psychological issues that have to do with kind of abandonment and rage and anger against black people. But the bottom line is he came to believe the same things that Rush Limbaugh believed and came to be his friend on top of all of that.
Rush Limbaugh. I knew he didn't do it. I knew Clarence Thomas didn't do it. Anita Hill's stories about Clarence Thomas were not true.
He would listen to Rush Limbaugh as he was doing a long commute, and he would have court staff tape record it so he could listen to it when he was commuting.
Your attempt to assuage all of your white guilt by supporting Obama is worthless because you know he's not a real black. If any race of people should not have guilt about slavery, it's Caucasians.
The two became close friends.
The fear was Clarence Thomas has confirmed he then becomes the most powerful, influential black man in America. And he's not a Democrat, and he's not a liberal.
Thomas even presided over one of Limbaugh's weddings.
Throughout his career, he's been willing to do things that were certainly eyebrow-raising. Justice Thomas, seemed to relish his close relationship with Rush Limbaugh as a way of giving the finger to people who, he didn't like.
A misogynist is a guy who hates women almost as much as women hate women.
And so if you ask yourself, like, what is Donald Trump's retribution? It's the court. It's the court. Through a stolen seat and 2 additional seats, Donald Trump now has 3 out of 9 members of the court. And when you combine them with John Roberts, whose whole career has been sort of pursued in opposition of things like voting rights and affirmative action and anything that essentially helps black people, right? And you add to that Clarence Thomas, who's got this sort of odd psychological, like, hatred of black people, and Samuel Alito, who's basically a right-wing podcaster with a Supreme Court seat for life, and add to that the 3 Trump justices who now give you 6 ideologues who are essentially using the court to get revenge on behalf of white Christian men who detest the modern world in which women seem out of control. They don't want to have babies. Well, we are in the court. There's 6 of us. We can make them do it, right? Retribution against black people, against things like affirmative action that they feel don't give, elite white people and white scions of the rich enough spots in elite institutions. John Roberts, who's a Harvard alum, clearly feels offended that black people have invaded places like Harvard and Yale, and he's going to put a stop to that, as will Clarence Thomas, who resents the fact that he's basically gotten help from white people his whole life, including by getting into Yale through affirmative action. And of course, Alito, who's enraged about the idea of the modern world, women being out of control and not having babies, and just everything about modernity he literally cannot stand. And now, because they have this majority, they're using it to be Donald Trump's revenge, to be the revenge of white, conservative Christian men. And they're taking revenge against everybody. The blacks, who they feel are getting too much. The gays, who they feel are out of control and sort of putting, gay rights in our face and making us see gay characters in movies and read books about, Johnny has 2 mommies and 2 daddies and this is offensive, and the drag shows are making us nervous because we might be kind of attracted to them and we're really not sure if this person is a man or a woman, and we're kind of weirded out by that, so we need to make that illegal. And everything that makes essentially white Christian conservative men uncomfortable, they now have a 6-person majority on the court in order to eradicate it. And they're using it, and they're aggressively using it. So you shouldn't be surprised that this is happening. Because Donald Trump said, I'm your retribution. I'm going to be your payback. And he didn't mean all of us. He meant white, conservative, Christian men. And they are about that life, and they are getting that retribution. If you're upset about that, there is something you can do. In order to change the court, you have to change the Senate. You have to control the body that controls who gets on the court, and that is the United States Senate. And you need to get a Senate majority that will actually vote to expand the court, to limit the court, to force the court to live by, ethics rules, which they don't have to do right now. And you have to hold the White House. So in the end, the answer is not the sexy answer that you might want. The answer to trying to stop this court is through the exact same function that you used to stop Donald Trump from being president again. It's the vote. Conservative Christians have worked for 50 years and voted consistently for 50 years to get a court that would overturn Roe, that they hope will also overturn gay rights, gay marriage, literally every modern right that we have, modern immigration, everything, because they want to go back to an era where they felt comfortable, meaning an era in which nobody other than white Christian men had full rights as American citizens. They're very clear and they're very focused on getting that, and they're getting it through the court because they can't get it through the popular plebiscite because no one will vote for it. There is no majority for it. There's no majority that will vote for it. And they haven't been able to get it through the White House. They're getting it through the court. So stay woke, get registered, and vote. Control the Senate, hold the White House, change the court. That's the formula.
And also, let me say this again. You must also hold the House of Representatives, because for an impeachment process, for those of you all, I know a lot of people, no shade, didn't really start paying attention to politics until Trump until Führer. But the impeachment process starts in the House. Then it moves to the Senate. And we know right now, with the majority of Republicans there, they're not going to impeach anyone, where then it moves on to the Senate to determine whether or not they can be removed. Yes, the Senate does control the confirmation hearings, all of those things. But you got to start from the bottom up. That's what conservatives are doing now. Why do you think that there are now millions of dollars being put into school board elections? They're starting from the bottom up. I've gone over this with you before. They are establishing not only credibility with these candidates from school board and aldermen and assemblyman elections and small time mayoral and village elections, but they're also influencing the educational system at its root. Because if they can keep you uneducated, they can keep telling you whatever and you believing it and not researching it. Now, I know with the blow to affirmative action that predominantly affects white women and white people in general, Harvard found a loophole. It's Harvard. Of course they did. Let's check it out.
Have you guys seen it? Have you seen it? Harvard found a loophole, and they put it out in a statement, most likely as a rallying cry. The court also ruled that colleges and universities may consider in admissions decisions an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise. We will certainly comply with the court's decision. Oh, malicious compliance. Watch other universities start doing this.
Yeah, they just said they can't put it on the application. And here's my thing. It's unconstitutional to do that. Why is it constitutional to have to put your race down on a loan application, on a residency application? If race isn't supposed to play a part, take it off of everything. Take it off of everything. And while we're at it, because credit scores are barely older than me, let's also eliminate credit scores. If we want a meritocracy, bring us to equity. Oh, that's right. Because when they really, truly have to compete, they can't compare. Because when white people can have their houses appraised properly, but Black, brown, indigenous people of color have to remove everything that shows their race, their ethnicity in order to get a proper appraisal. Don't tell me that we're getting a leg up. Now on to Black, brown people of color who happen to be immigrants. And New York City. Don't freak out. The beginning of this video is a little rocky for a reason. Watch to the end. Trust me. I've never led you astray. Oops, well, that video doesn't want to play. Let's go on to the forced birth discussion, and then we'll come back to NYC and immigration.
I can't stand my son. I'm 24. My son is 7. I had him when I was 17 and I hate it. His father was a guy much older than me that I knew for barely any time at all, and things went wrong and one day he forced himself on me. My parents don't believe in baby garbage, so I had no choice but to keep the pregnancy, and they told me how happy they were for a biological grandchild, since I guess they were scared they might not have one. My older brother had come out as gay a year before, and I came out as bisexual a few months later, which I guess they took as also gay. I don't think they realized how horrible the whole situation was for me. They're not bad people, just painfully dense and emotionally unaware. Because of their pressuring, I felt obligated to keep the kid and raise it, and I regret it with every fiber of my being. Hell, my brother offered to adopt him and I really couldn't do it. That way I could still see him, but I wouldn't need to get his mother. But I didn't want to force that on him. He was only 21 and still wanted to live his life and seize his opportunities, and putting my brother under the same stress that I was would have broken me. So I kept him. I wish I could say, truly, that I love him, but I don't know. I can't tell if I love him or if I just feel guilty for how much I can't stand to look at him. I can't stand looking at him, and it's not even because he looks like his father or anything, it's because he looks like me. He has my hair and eyes, and my mom always makes comments about how I looked so much like him when I was his age, and it makes me sick to my stomach. Because it just reminds me of how my life fell apart, of how young I was, and how any hope of a future that I love for myself is gone now. I just want to go back. I just want to be 17 again and have my childhood the way I was supposed to. Most of all, I just hate myself. I hate myself for hating my son, and I hate myself for disappointing my parents and everyone who believed in me when I was young.
For all of you that are so anti-abortion, no matter what, you don't think of the trauma that the mother goes through. You don't think of the plausible abuse and trauma that that child goes through. And before people go, well, this woman had a choice to give up the child to her brother. They're siblings. She would still have to see this child. Her parents knew what happened. They would still bring it up. And even when conception is not forced, stop this soon as someone gets into a serious relationship, soon as someone gets married. When are you going to give me grandkids? When are you all going to have kids? When? Everybody is not cut out to be a parent, because you don't get to later down the line complain about bad parents, complain about mistakes the parents made because they were not ready to be parents at that point. Complain about and be like, oh, you should burn them at the stake. Go burn yourself. But now on to immigration and New York City.
It's now been revealed that New York City Mayor Eric Adams, a Democrat, has been shipping migrants from New York City to all areas of the globe, not just around the country, but around the globe, because some of them, according to the reports, have actually been shipped off to China. Thousands of migrants from New York City have been shipped to other states around the country. You know, similar to the thing that just a few months ago, Eric Adams criticized Texas's Republican Governor Greg Abbott and Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis of doing the same thing, right? Eric Adams came out and said, well, this is terrible, this is horrible. They're using these people as political pawns by publicly shipping them all over the country. And now we find out that Eric Adams has also been shipping migrants all over the United States and in some cases all over the world. The only difference, of course, is that Eric Adams didn't publicize it, right? He wanted to do this on the down low because it's so super sinister and he knows how evil it is, right? It would seem that way. But here's the reality of it. See, when I first came across this story, I got super pissed. I was super pissed, ready to sit here and call out the absolute hypocrisy of what was happening with Eric Adams. Because the headline would have you say, it says right here from the Hill, Eric Adams sent migrants to Florida, Texas abroad. And the article even talks about the fact that he had just called out the Republican governors for doing it. Now he's doing a similar thing. Isn't this just as bad, folks? Isn't this both sidesism here? If we've got Democrats doing the same thing Republicans are doing? No, it's not. Because as you read a little further in the article, it actually explains what's happening here. See, even though Adams and the city of New York have spent thousands of dollars shipping thousands of migrants across the country, it is in no way, shape, or form similar to what these Republican governors have also done. Because Republican governors have now spent millions of dollars doing this. And, as the investigation suggests, they duped these people into shipping them around the country to blue states to stick it to those sanctuary cities, right? What Eric Adams and the city of New York have done is actually hospitable. They have spoken to these people. They're currently putting them up in hotels and rental homes while they try to figure out where these people need to go. Because see, the money that Adams has spent sending these people all around the country, and again, even to China in some instances, is because that's where these people's families are. That's where these people wanted to go. The report also says that all of these people signed up willingly because they wanted to be reunited with their families. They ended up in New York. They needed to get to where their families were. And the city of New York has been humanely and responsibly sending them to the places where they actually want to go. And I'm telling you this story right now not to point out Democratic hypocrisy. I'm telling you this story to point out how horrible the media is. As I said, when I came across this headline, and it was on multiple different sites, I got pissed off. I thought, oh my God, this SOB up in New York is doing the same damn thing. Gotta call him out for it. Absolutely. Not gonna let him get away with it. And that's unfortunately how most people consume the news. Nobody wants to go beyond the headlines in most instances, and sometimes they only go into the first paragraph of the story. And sure, if you do that, you're not going to get the whole thing. You have to pay attention to every single bit of it. Because if I hadn't done that in this particular instance, I'd still be sitting here fuming about Eric Adams. There's plenty to be mad at him for. He's not a very good mayor. But his migrant transportation is nothing like what we have seen from these Republican governors, and based on the reality of it, doesn't seem like anything we should be mad at right now.
He's absolutely correct. And Mayor Adams is what I call a dino, Democrat in name only. He's always on the campaign trail, and he's very pro-cop. Like very pro-cop. He will not offer, from what I've seen in interviews, any type of criticism towards police. But what he is doing with migrants is commendable. Now, speaking of one of those politicians that just handles all of their citizens, excuse me, poorly, El Führer DeSantis.
Oh my God, this man is evil. I'm gonna give you a scenario. You're living in Florida, you've been married for 10 years. Your husband falls down the Joe Rogan hole. You end up getting pregnant. While he's spouting about alpha male this and alpha male that, you have your child, and the child is disabled. And he now blames you, the wife. So much so that he wants a divorce from you. Until yesterday, Florida courts allowed permanent alimony to a woman who had a disabled child. It allowed permanent alimony for somebody who, say, is not fiscally capable of taking care of herself. Or say somebody gets a traumatic brain injury and they end up disabled, and the other person wants to divorce them. Or say he's so controlling that he never lets her go to school, never lets her work. She knows no idea how to work in the real world, like a child bride. Before, Florida courts would allow permanent alimony. It was rare. The court gave it to spouses who needed financial assistance and are unable to become self-supporting in the future. That's what permanent alimony was. Well, Ron DeSantis hates women so much, he just got rid of it. He got rid of it. It's gone. And he wants to be the president. What?
With that, I'm just going to say, make sure you view the links in the description of this video. Make sure you view the links in the description of this video. As always, thank you for viewing. Do keep in mind, excuse me, tomorrow's podcast is going to be very brief, and it's going to occur a bit earlier, about 3 hours earlier. But as you know, once I'm done with live, it is here for you to view as many times as you like. It's going to take place at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because as long as the weather is okay, I have a neighbor that tells me that there's a particular celebration I should check out, which means that there's shenanigans afoot. So I'm going to go see what those shenanigans are. But as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. And if you like the show, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Like I said, check out the links in the description of this video. Make sure you follow me on other social media platforms, because I do spread everything across all of the platforms. Till tomorrow.
Y'all ain't learned that. Didn't learn nothing. I want to know who going. I want to know what fool is going to be like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I wonder if it's going to be 150. What you think it's going to be? $350,000? Yeah, I got that. I got that. I'm going down in that boat to go see that other boat. To look at some boots and plates. The what? You better find out if it's going to be some black people on there. If it ain't, don't you go on there. The what? You ain't learned? Them people don't care about nothing. Don't care about nothing. Not even the person that freaking started the whole thing. He dead. The what? Setting up trips for next year. I want to see what fool is going to say, sign me up for that. Sign me up. Please let me see that fool that says sign me up.